Hello, year two. Welcome back. So, this is lesson 3 of week 4. We're looking at materials and what they're really made of. So, talk to your Teddy. Why was it that the nurses decided that cotton was the best material? Why do we think that? Can you remember what we found out? Pause the video, talk to your Teddy, and then come back. So, we found out that nurses used those cotton bandages during the Crimean War, but why? Well, it was quite common because we knew that it grew on a plant. It was also very absorbent, so it could soak up that blood. It had lots of little tiny holes in so that the wound could breathe and the oxygen could help the soldiers cut. But most importantly, it could be washed, and therefore meaning it could be reused. And we said how important that was, because otherwise they would have run out of materials. They would not have had enough bandages for everyone if they were throwing them away after every time. So what they've done is they were recycling, if you will. They were reusing their bandages so that they could keep using them for different soldiers, even though they were dirty before, but as soon as they cleaned them and boil washed them, so that if they at high enough temperature, those germs would have died, and therefore meant that it was safe to use it again for the next soldier. Right. I've got a question, and I know you might be thinking this as well. So my question was, cotton was good. We found that out. We've seen it. Cotton bandage, I showed you in the last session. Very good. We spoke about how it is something that can stretch, twist, bend, and squash. So it's good for moving it around the body as well. And it's absorbent. So we found out that t-shirts were very good at absorbing. And they can be twisted, and they can be squashed, and they can stretch, and they can bend. So just like cotton. So why not make the bandages out of these materials? I don't see why not. So let's investigate. I want you to get your own t-shirt and have an investigation. So you need to start off with your t-shirt and you need to find the label. So I think my label, I've gone to the bottom of my t-shirt where I put my body in, and right at the bottom I've got a small label here, and on the label it might say keep away from fire, it might tell you where it's made, but I'm looking for, and you might need an adult to help you with this, I'm looking for a specific bit of information on it that might give you a percentage, which is a number with a little symbol next to it. Your adult can help you with this, and then it'll say a word. So on mine says polyester. My turn, your turn. Polyester. Polyester. And mine also says viscose. Viscose. And you might also have one that might have polyester, it might have viscose, and you might even have one that might say nylon. So nylon. Now these are 3 materials, or 3 types of fabrics. And they're all absorbent. And the most common are these 3. So it seems really bizarre how we wouldn't make some other type of bandages, maybe like a polyester bandage. It's absorbent, so it seems silly, why not? And that's because they're man-made. These types of materials, they didn't exist in 1850. They have been man-made. So that means we've found other materials and we've changed them by adding maybe chemicals, and then we've made it into a type of yarn, so a type of fabric, and then we've weaved it into a t-shirt. But it's not something that grows on a plant. You have to make it. So it's a man-made product. So a man-made product. Man-made product. Well done. So let's investigate. So nylon. So we've mentioned this word, nylon. Well, nylon is actually a mixture, a chemical mixture between some acids and some other chemicals, and you mix it together and you can see this gloopy liquid. It looks like slime. What it is it's these these two different types of chemicals have joined together and they've made some very, very, very thin kind of fibers. And what happens here is the machines then weave these fibers all together and they make really, really tiny, thin fiber bits and clothing. And what you do is you then weave them together and you can make clothing out of it. So nylon is something that you might find as tights in nylon, or you can have something like a fishing rod line, that would be nylon. So it can be used for lots of different things, but it definitely is something that is absorbent if you have enough of it. And you can see that this wouldn't be available to Florence Nightingale or Mary Seacole, because this is a type of chemical reaction that we've not found out yet in science. So this didn't exist. So that's one of the reasons why that t-shirt, if you've got a nylon piece of clothing, that's why that wouldn't have been used. Polyester. Polyester is one of the most common types of fabrics that's used for t-shirts. So why not that? Well, again, polyester is made by mixing in alcohol and a type of acid. It's then swirled up together, fed out into a machine, using into like these little tiny chips, if you will. And then the chips are then put in a big bowl and boiled. And then once they're boiled, they make this syrupy solution. And then it's then weaved into very tiny little strands of like almost like string. And then that's weaved into a t-shirt as well. So again, lots of technology, lots of different equipment, not something they could have done in 1850. Viscose or rayon. Now, this is a type of actual wood. And what it is it's wood that you get and then you pulp it. So you add different type of chemicals and it becomes into some really soft, it's almost like tissue papery kind of pulp, a bit like slimy pulp kind of thing. And then from that, it's spun really, really thin into yarn and then it's woven into fabric again. But these chemicals didn't exist to know how to make it into the pulp, and we didn't have the machinery to help spin it into the yarn. So it was something that came a lot later. And although we did have machinery to spin into yarn for certain things like cotton, there wasn't any knowledge of the chemicals to make it into it. So what does this mean? Well, it means none of these other materials or ingredients that we found in most of our t-shirts were actually invented or easier to make than cotton, which means cotton was actually the easiest type of material to make. And therefore, that's why most of the things were made out of the bandages. One of the other things you might have seen is if you've got a jumper, some of you might have seen or you've heard of wool. It comes from sheep. And the wool can be woven into a jumper. Now, wool jumpers are very, very cozy. Now, the issue with wool as a product for the soldiers, of whether it was a bandage or whether it was the bedding, although it keeps you nice and warm, you try and boil wash wool, it will go from being this big and it will go and it will shrink into being almost half its size, if not smaller, because it gets so hot. And what happens is those fibers heat up and then they shrink because they're not actually supposed to be stretched. So unlike cotton, you can boil it and clean it, wool you can't. These other fabrics that we've looked at, the polyester, you can boil wash. However, because we weren't able to use the technology to make them, they didn't know what polyester was. The most important fact that we need to remember is that the materials, certain ones couldn't be boil washed, and that means that there'd be no guarantee that the majority of the germs had been killed. But because cotton could be, we know for a fact that that is how she managed to save a lot of the lives, Florence Nightingale, by keeping the hospitals so clean. So this is our final part of today's topic. I would like you to then think about writing up your experiment results. So what did you find out when you were doing your absorbency test? You found that one of them was maybe the best at absorbing and one of them was the worst. One of them didn't absorb any water or blood. So you need to tell me which one was the best and which one was the worst and why. Try and challenge yourself. You can do this, I know. The next one would be, tell me which of your then objects that we did on the second test could bend, twist, squash, or stretch, and then which one of those objects couldn't be changed. And then you're finally going to say which of the objects would be best for a bandage and why. So you're really going to be thinking about evaluating, which is a really important skill, thinking about all the information you've collected, and you're going to evaluate, and then you're going to write it up in a few sentences on a sheet for me. Your challenge would be, can you tell me why during the Crimean War it was so important to have cotton bandages and bedding? We've spoken about it a lot, so why do you think it was so important to have those bandages and bedding made from cotton? Any of the facts that you found out in the last 3 sessions you can use for that. I'd like you to post this work onto Tapestry, and then I can tag it and I can add it to your profile and I can comment, and that's brilliant to see that you're working from home. Thank you very much for coming to this last lesson. I look forward to seeing you next week. Goodbye, year 2.